Talking to David Woldman from Charter One. Good morning, David.
Good morning.
Before we get started, there's something a little bit unusual. I'm the most anxious to talk to you for a rather unusual reason. Everybody brings something a little bit different to the table, so to speak. But one of the things that I noticed about you is that your volume has stayed very consistent, that you did about $40 million in 98 and about the same amount in 99, and that you're actually, from somebody I talked to, that you're actually on target to do the same volume this year. And I find that very, very unusual, and it's extremely rare because even people who are very heavy producers, and you certainly are one, these people, their volumes have dropped down in the last couple of years naturally. So, in essence, you're, compared to your contemporaries, you really are in kind of a rare class, and it's my business to kind of know these things. So, we'll be talking about that. I'm most anxious to talk about it. But before we actually get into the, what you're doing now and everything, everybody has a kind of an innate sense that they want to know where people came from and how they got in the business. So why don't we start there?
Not a problem.
Start talking.
Yeah, you want me to just go ahead?
This is very free-flowing. You can say whatever you want except the F words.
No problem. Well, that's going to be hard for me to stay away from. No, I got into the business in 1986 and graduated from college during a real down period in the hiring sector.
Mm-hmm. Where'd you go to school?
University of Southern California.
Okay.
Graduated their business entrepreneur program. I really wanted to know how overall businesses run, let alone just one area. And I came out of school and went through the interviewing process on campus and interviewed with huge companies like Gallo and Aetna. Pretty much nowhere got jobs. Burroughs, Gallo, Aetna, NCR. Just almost nobody was hiring at the time. And took a job right out of school with Nissan Motor Acceptance Corporation, doing collections. Pretty much hated that. Within a few weeks, probably 6 weeks, went into selling investments over the telephone, more like a boiler room operator.
Yeah, right, sure.
Yeah, it was totally like it was pipelines in the Adirondacks for transporting oil. Needless to say, I hated that.
8-to-1 tax write-off, right?
Yeah, exactly. You call 80-year-old people in Sarasota, Florida, that are watching congressional hearings. That's the kind of person you were talking to.
I think they used to call those silver straddles or something like that.
Whatever they called it. I did it for like 4 weeks. Didn't make any sales. Said, I'm not doing this. I'm not going for my Series 63 and 7s and all that. It was just too much boiler for me.
Yeah. I wonder how many people you put on the street, though, in that month.
I got to tell you that a couple guys that I worked with there, it was a pretty legitimate company. They're actually really big. And very successful individuals worked in the office I worked out of. It was a pretty good company. They never got picked up by the law or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But during that time period, a friend of mine's father told me about the mortgage business, and that a friend of his owned a mortgage brokerage company in Southern California, and I should go talk to him. So I dressed up in a pinstripe suit, went and talked to the guy, and he basically showed me one of his top producers' commission sheets that showed that year to date in August. It was August 14th. It was the day before my birthday. It showed me a commission sheet that showed this guy had made $238,000 in 1986 by August. I said, sign me up.
Yeah, right.
I said, sign me up. So I went through 2 hours of conventional training and an hour of FHA training, and they threw me out in the field in Southern California selling mortgages. And I worked for a broker, one of the better brokers in town, and more or less floundered for a couple of years as I learned the business on my own. And luckily, I was living at home and kind of stuff with a girlfriend or, just whatever was, wherever I could get a place to stay cheap.
Sure.
And had some really good people in the area, that worked for the company that I just watched and emulated. And I followed what worked for them and didn't follow what didn't work for other people, and just really watched, played sponge.
Can we stop there, because I like that. And every interview I do, someone brings something different to the game, and that concept, I did that years ago on a job that I won't get into, but that whole concept of taking what works for you and emulating others, but then the second corollary most people seem to forget, and that is the stuff that doesn't work for you, you got to drop it.
Absolutely.
And I wonder if you'd expound on that a little bit, and maybe be a little specific on what you did in those days to do that.
Well, I was in the Southern California area. I was in Los Angeles, which had about, at the time, 13,000 realtors and 8,000 mortgage brokers or bankers. So it was almost 1-to-1. And I mean, it was like 1.5 to 1. It was really a high concentration of mortgage people. That it was very competitive, and I would watch to see what I would try things. I would just try something different. I would try a different approach. I would try a different type of thank you card. I would try a different type of advertising. I would watch people make attempts to make certain kind of relationships work, and I would throw out what didn't work. And you know what basically came out of that was 3 things. And those 3 things I live by daily. I mean, it's what my business is founded on, and those 3 items came through watching some of the most successful and some of the worst producers I've ever seen in my life. And what I made sure of is that I never, I'm not an organized person. I do everything in my head. I kept a mental tally of what was working and what wasn't working. And believe it or not, it came down to 3 things. Return your calls within 15 minutes. Don't ever lie to anybody. And treat them just like you would want to be treated yourself. Bottom line, no gimmicks, no games, no nothing. People want information. They want reliable information. They want it fast. If you're the person with the information, now that one's kind of unique because that one is not one that I came up with as an intent to come up with it. In Los Angeles during the time that I'm talking about, the competition was so stiff that literally if you weren't the first person to return the call, the first person that did return the call got the deal. Mm-hmm. So, I just built a reputation on being Johnny on the spot. I was always available. I had cell phones back when they were nothing. And even when I couldn't afford to pay the bill, I had cell phones.
You're right, because the cell phones, the first 20 people in the country, 2 of them were received by some people that I'm still good friends with, and that was in 1984. And they were only, so you're right, they were very, very new in 86.
I got a phone in 1987. It was about February. I got a Walker phone that cost me $1,750. I paid 47 cents off peak time and 97 cents peak time.
Boy, that's incredible. I've forgotten about that.
Incoming or outgoing. And the deal was, I didn't give anybody the number. I just returned calls as quickly as I could. And then the other part about being honest was I found that, a lot of loan officers during that time period felt that being there fast and having the answer fast was important, when being there fast and having the right answer was more important. So knowing your product and having the self-confidence to say to somebody, you know what, that's a great question, give me 15 minutes, I'll get back to you. Where other people would just wing it and be wrong. And that was a very, very difficult time in the mortgage business. Deals were taking 90 to 120 days to go through. Underwriting was asking for absolutely everything. We were brokers, so it was even tougher, and you really had to know the ever-changing business. And then the third thing was treat people like you want to be treated yourself. I watched a lot of loan officers, even managers and even owners of companies, set false expectations to buyers. People are great. If you tell somebody you're going to have an answer for them Thursday and you have an answer for them Friday, you're the jerk. But if you tell them you have an answer for them Friday and you have it for them Thursday, you're God. And I learned that very early on.
Like that. Mm-hmm.
So my big philosophy was I don't care what loan you take as long as you take it from me, and that when you walk away from the table you're extremely happy, so that you feel that I've done what you've needed me to do, so that you feel comfortable in referring anybody, including family and friends, to me, and that when your next need arises you will call me, whether I've stayed in touch or not. And then the last thing is really just, make sure that you counsel instead of sell. I don't sell. I mean, my skill, I get paid for my knowledge. I get paid for knowing how to solve problems with my products. I don't get paid for anything else.
It's interesting you say that because very few people focus on that. There's an old theory in sales that it really boils down to two things: know your product and know how to close.
Mm-hmm. See, closing, to me, I'm not a big, strong closer, which is one of those funny things, because I do a very soft close in a lot of cases. If I'm busy, I do a real soft close. If I'm not busy, I go for the throat. But
all right,
it's you got to do. See, you made a comment about how have I been able to maintain a certain level of productivity. It's
You do understand that you're really in a pretty rarefied class, because very few people have maintained not only the amount of volume that you do, but the consistency over this last 3-year period.
Right.
It's very rare,
and it's unique for several reasons, actually. And until we started talking, I never really did any introspection and look at this. But I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, in 1995. When I moved here, I worked for Norwest in Southern California. I would never have left Southern California were it not for Norwest buying the company that I worked for. The company I worked for was the best company in the entire world. If Gary Anderson was still alive, I'd be working for him. He owned a company called Director's Mortgage, and I worshiped the ground he walked on. He made a company that ran not only on product, on knowledge, on fair competition, but on desire to succeed. It was everything above board. It was strong product. It was strong compensation. It was a level of camaraderie that I've never had in any other organization I've worked in, including Charter One. It was the only company that was run in such a way that everybody felt as if they were team players.
Mm-hmm. I do want to kind of caution you. We do try and stay away from talking about individual companies.
No, that's fine.
In general, a compliment's great.
Yeah, I'm just telling you. It was a great. I never would have left there, but Norwest bought the company, opened the opportunity for change. I didn't want to stay in California because of the falling economy. My territory was 1.25 miles from the epicenter of the Northridge earthquake. My territory was Northridge.
Mm-hmm. I know exactly where it is.
Most of my business came either from across the street or right next door to the building that collapsed and killed people.
Yep, I can visualize exactly. It was a white building.
Yeah, it was right next to Paramount Properties, yep, across the street from Pinnacle Properties and R.R. Gable, which were my mainstay of business. And it was a very depressing time. I had a baby, and I had an opportunity to convince my wife to let me move. So we packed up and we moved to Charlotte. We picked it. It's a long story. I'll make it real short.
That's fine. We got all the time in the world.
My folks live in Manhattan. They moved there several years earlier. My wife is born and raised in Southern California. Didn't want to leave her family, especially after having a baby. We got a call. The in-laws were going to move to Jacksonville, Florida. I told her I wasn't moving to Florida. She said, that's fine, I'm not moving to Manhattan. And we picked something in between. Places Rated Almanac showed Raleigh and Charlotte as being probably the best markets in the right in between area.
Oh yeah, they're incredible.
And I came out to Charlotte first, and I fell in love. Transferred myself out here with Norwest, sold my house. I literally didn't sell my house. I went back, quit my job. 3 days later, came out here, bought a house, rented my house in California. 3 weeks later, had a truck filled. 4 weeks later, had a truck filled and moved. And I moved out to Charlotte. I did not know anybody.
That's a gutsy thing to do, because you're giving up business, and as you know, our business is built on relationships.
Well, I had just come off a couple of pretty good years, had some money in the bank. I had some confidence that if I could just do a few deals a month, I could live in Charlotte on $80,000 a year, no problem. And I felt it was something that needed to be done, because I really didn't believe in the California market. I was in a bad frame of mind, and I needed a change. And luckily, I came to a place I didn't know anybody. I didn't have a family member. I didn't have a friend. I didn't have an acquaintance here. And that works in your benefit, because in my case, I use it as an opportunity to redefine myself. Nobody knew who I was, what my reputation was, or anything like that. Nobody knew my previous flaws from high school or college. Nobody knew my drunken days at the fraternity like you.
Yeah, right.
Nobody knew any of that. Nobody knew who I was, where I came from, what I knew and what I didn't know. So I had an opportunity to come out here with my wife and my brand new baby, and literally start over. And it didn't take long. My first year out here, I closed $18 million.
Wow, that's incredible. For what year was that?
That was 1996. Was my first full year here.
That's amazing.
I moved out here in the summer of '95. Started work September of '95. Therefore, you can imagine I didn't close anything till November of '95. So literally, you know, you got to go from January to '96 is my first year here. I closed $18.7 million. I was the number 2 producer in the Charlotte market for Norwest. And I did it strictly on, I needed to make money.
Yeah.
I mean, I needed to make money.
It's a great motivator, isn't it?
Plus,
kind of the ultimate motivator.
Yeah, well, and there was 2 other motivators as well. There's actually 3. One is I'm totally petrified of failure. And not failure that I can't deal with, failure that other people would see. It's an emotional thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been that way my entire life. 2, I'm one of those that always care what other people think about them. Don't ask me why, as if it's important in life. The second thing is, when I came out here from Los Angeles, you know. I was silk shirts and slacks, you know, $195 slacks and polished shoes, and you know, I got a tattoo on the back of my leg, and I was suntan, and I was talking the talk and walking the walk.
Looking good, right?
You know what I mean? I was like Rooster Cogburn, man.
You're right.
I walked into town, and it was mine, and I was given 3 months. Matter of fact, one of the most defining things was I had to walk up to my boss's boss's boss and say, you know what, I've seen you around here. Who are you? To get an introduction, because they had so little confidence that this guy from California could make any way in there that I was given 3 months before I left and went back to California. And that was it. You don't give me an ultimatum like that. Because now, remember, my biggest fear in life is what people think about me. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Couple that with an ultimatum of you're going to fail, and we all know it. You just blew it. You just gave any chance of that happening just went out the window. They would have been better off saying nothing and watching me wither, because it might have happened. But because of I don't know if it might have happened or not. I mean, I'm pretty self-motivated, but I mean, I really felt like I had no choice in the matter, and I couldn't go back to California anyways, because I made that big gutsy move that all my friends said I'd be back in 3 months
Sure.
there too.
How about let's getting into some specifics, because it's one thing to talk the talk and do the walk, but what exactly is doing the walk? What did you do specifically to make it happen for you? That could be a lesson for people or listeners today.
Very simply, came out here, went into the area, defined what market I wanted to call on, what clientele I wanted to work with, and I tried several different approaches until I found the one that worked over here in Charlotte. Luckily, at the same time, I had a boss that gave me a couple of insights into what he was seeing me do and what he thought was working and what he didn't think was working. By the way, he's still my boss today.
Mm-hmm. Did you take his advice?
Some of it, yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So I take some of everything, and I don't think I've ever taken all of anything. But shortly thereafter, an owner of one of the RE/MAX offices here locally in town pulled me into her office and literally pulled me in her office as if she was going to be real nice to me and give me a lead or something, shut the door and kicked me between the eyes with stiletto heels, told me that I was a bull in a china shop, that I was saying the wrong things and talking too fast, and was being Mr. California in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And between those two people and their insights into the way I was acting and what the clientele wanted, I redefined myself again and went back out and I started interviewing real estate agents. Instead of soliciting them, I started setting up one-on-one appointments. I had 10 questions. I went in and I interviewed a real estate agent. What made them successful, what they looked for, what the markets they carried out in, and how they planned their days. And I worked 7 days a week for at least 6 months. At least.
So you had good personal work habits, too.
Well, and when I say work, people that know me know that I don't ever work 8 hours or 10-hour days. Unless, I got a real busy schedule that particular day. But, I would work and make phone calls and put marketing material together in the morning. I'd spend 4 hours out in the field different times a day. And then I'd be home waiting for the phone to ring and working on the marketing materials for the next day and putting together my interviews and recapping what was working and what wasn't working. And I went through that whole thing, and I mean, if it was pouring rain, I was wearing a raincoat and a cowboy hat and a pair of boots, and I was walking into every office anyways. These people had nobody to talk to, and they couldn't believe that I was there. And I solicited deals backwards. If I got a deal, I worked it, I made sure I did a good job, then I talked to the listing agent and the selling agent, kept everybody apprised, and just slowly started building a reputation. It went from working 7 days a week in the field for 6 months to I don't go out in the field hardly at all anymore. I very rarely solicit business. When I have a sales call, it's a big sales call, a builder, a sales manager, or something of that nature, or just go and have lunch with one of my contacts. The way that my goal in life is not to build a stream of business like most mortgage people and work the 7 people that, for their 18 deals each a year and have a fluctuation in my business due to a fluctuation in their business.
Sure.
The reason I've been able to maintain a certain level of production is, I hate to say it as arrogantly as this, but it's by design. I want to make X number of dollars a year. I am happy at a certain level. If I keep a production level of 40 million, that's the income level I like. So I do what it takes to make that level. If I wanted 50 million, I would carry it to 50. If I only wanted 30, I would scale it back to 30. As commission schedule change, I maintain a business. I'm not interested in doing 100 million, because that would mean, well, let's put it this way. I learned something early on. When I worked in California, I was hated in the organization that I worked in because the top producers would do $30 million in business and do 600 loans. And I would do $30 million in business and do 90 loans. So I worked smart, not hard. I didn't need every $50,000 deal. I needed a few of the $200,000 and $300,000 and $400,000 deals. So I work for $4 to $6 million a month in originations and $4 to $6 million a month in fundings, and I pretty much work that kind of lifestyle. So if like last month I got $7 million in originations by the 15th of the month, the second half of the month is pretty easy cruising, or I'm not working 6 hours a day or 12 hours a day. I'm working to maintain a level of production, which may or may not be the smartest way to do it, but it works very well for me.
Mm-hmm.
And by maintaining that level of production, that gives me a balance of family time. That gives me the ability to pick my daughter up from school just about every day. That gives me the ability to sleep in every morning if I choose to. And I've just found this comfort level. Now, I can't say that it's all by design because markets do fluctuate.
But the last couple of years have been pretty good markets. Having said that, obviously the big drop-off and where people's volume started to go down was in the refis, that they didn't concentrate enough on the purchase monies, which obviously you have.
But I don't do refis.
Okay.
I mean, and I'll expound on that.
Yeah, I wish you would. Right? Because I think there's a lesson out there for people who are listening to this, especially people that got caught in the refis. It's like a heroin junkie.
Well, I'd like to say that most of it was by design, but it's not. Some is and some wasn't. In California, by the time I left, I'd been working there for 9-10 years, and I had a huge pipeline of business that I had done loans for. So when the rates dropped, I could be like everybody else and not go out and work against. Remember, in Los Angeles, there were 14,000 or 13,000 realtors and 8,000, 9,000 mortgage guys.
That's unbelievable.
So because of that, the purchase business, and I got to tell you, the Los Angeles market, and I hate to say this, and I don't care if it's on an interview live or not, was very corrupt at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You literally had to pay a realtor to give you a deal, which is against the law. And I have a very, very strong moral, I mean, I shouldn't overestimate my moral or ethical values, but I was appalled,
mm-hmm.
and I would not do that. So in 1992 and 1993, when the rest of the market was just dying on the vine, I was still doing $30 million a year in Los Angeles at huge profits, huge overages. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Huge overages.
Overages are good in my business.
Exactly, mine too. But maybe for the wrong person listening.
That's okay. No,
huge overages.
But have to be good ones.
I averaged in 1993 2.375 points per deal to me after split. So it was pretty big. It was a big year. And because of that, I did a lot of refis, and the market was gone in Los Angeles. I mean, I had people whose houses were collapsed, remember? I mean, this was earthquake time. But in 93, just before the earthquake, I did a lot of refis. I worked 4 or 5 hours a day, 4 days a week, and made a tremendous amount of money. And when the market turned out of refis and the economy was slow, my income dropped 67%. Once bitten, twice shy.
All right.
When I moved to Charlotte and the refi boom hit again while I was here in 1996, 97, even in 98 tremendously.
Oh, sure. Absolutely, in 98.
I did not participate. And I didn't participate for 2 reasons. Well, 3 reasons. One was I remembered. I remembered the pain of losing all my business after the refis. 2, I'd only been here for 2 years. I didn't have a big clientele to solicit. And the Charlotte market, unlike the California market, you can't call a title company and get farming packages. In Los Angeles, you want to do refis, you call a title company, give me a computer disk with everybody that bought a home from this lender to between this date and this date on this type of loan and this zip code, and you could send them a letter. In Charlotte, there's absolutely no way to do that. So not being able to do what I knew how to do to get refis, not having a base to go back and solicit, I had no choice but to stay away from them. And I didn't advertise because I never believed in paying for business.
And you have to prove prophetic, because now you have the best of all. You have, in essence, an annuity income stream you've created.
Absolutely. And then because of that, I made a conscious decision for number 3 and said, while everybody else is doing it, I'm taking their business. And I went out in the market again during 1998, and I did business with everybody. And when the refi people wouldn't return phone calls on Saturdays or Sundays or 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock at night because they were already done for the day, I was the guy around. And I never lied, and I always delivered, always. And then I started going after easier lines of business like builders. Instead of going to a real estate office that has 400 realtors and trying to get one deal from this guy and one deal from that guy a month, I go to a builder that's got 4 reps, and I say, stream me your 20 deals a month. And I've gone that route. Now the big thing that I'm into is I'm doing a lot of the very big stuff, which gives me, again, the opportunity. Remember, if I'm working the way I'm working, less time to work on loans, more times to build reputation, more times. I'm also managing an office, 2 offices now. I've got new loan officers. I'm training a brand new loan officer that's never been in the business ever. And I do builder lines of credit as well, so it gives me more time to concentrate on some of those other avenues as well. Like, for example, last month I did a total of 12 loans for $7 million.
That's incredible. So is there a market down there for big jumbos?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I closed one Tuesday of this week for $999, $999. I've got one closing Wednesday of next week for $1.5 million. I've got one closing the week after for $795. I do big business.
Isn't it amazing down there? For any of those people on the West Coast that haven't been to Charlotte, it's kind of an interesting fly, and I think you'll agree, because surrounding Charlotte, as you start to get out, you get farms.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you come on this incredible visual kind of sticking out of the ground.
Let me say this for all the people that don't know Charlotte. It stinks here. The people are horrible. The litter's garbage. It's a horrible place to live. You don't want to come and work here.
Yeah, right. Stay away.
With that said, the neighborhood that I happen to be moving into, and I'm doing this again for business, not only to make money on building a house and turning it over with the new capital gains laws, but because I do business with these higher-end builders where I supply them money to build specs and pre-solds. And there's an opportunity with one of our big developers here where I'm building in a neighborhood. Right now, there are only 45 homes into a 900 neighborhood, and the average price on the house is $825. And I'm moving into that neighborhood for reasons. I mean, I bought a lot there I've been there now for 4 months. Besides a lot going up tremendously, I've written $5 million worth of business in 4 deals because that's the neighborhood. I position myself towards my clientele. When I talk to customers, it's easy for me to say, oh, my lot's over here, and I know your situation with your income and what your needs are because I'm in the same place.
There's nothing better than a reference cell.
Right. And the big thing now is I've been here long enough where people call me out of the blue and say, so-and-so gave me your name, I need a loan, and they don't even shop me.
Let me actually get a little more specific, because there's a lot of listeners out there that I think if they were able to ask you some questions, the first question they would ask you is, what specifically are you doing now to ensure that you get this type of business? Is there anything that you do that might be a good tip for those listeners out there?
Absolutely. Solicit the business, ask for the business, under promise, over deliver, period.
Okay.
There's no other way. I mean, if you build your reputation as being a truth teller, as being somebody that comes through when you say you're going to come through, and when you can't do a deal, tell somebody you can't do a deal, and especially if you can't do a deal, if you know somebody that can, help them get their deal done, and be a point of reference, become a point of reference with the people that you're positioning yourself for, meaning I have builders that give me a call to ask me questions on how to solve problems because I've built myself as a knowledgeable person to them, a reference source. Now, it's different because when you do that, you're now on a different level. I don't think I am viewed as a loan officer. Again, I go back to that problem-solving thing. I get into deals because I know how to make them work. And the funkier the deal, the more that I've proven myself over the history of putting those deals together and being straightforward. I mean, there are plenty of times when I couldn't do a deal and I said I couldn't, and plenty of times when I said I could and I delivered exactly what I said I was going to, that have helped me build that kind of reputation. That takes time.
It's almost like you become a facilitator.
Absolutely. I exactly look at myself. When I talk to potential customers, depending on, is it a $100,000 purchase, is it a $2 million purchase? All that obviously comes into play, but I don't consider myself a salesperson. However, that's in business. However, if you were to walk up to me on the street and say to me, hey, David, let's say we met through friends, and you said, David, what do you do for a living? The first thing I would answer you is, I sell money. First and foremost, I sell money to everybody but the people I do business with. The people I do business with, I solve problems.
This is great.
You understand what I mean?
I understand. I understand perfectly. The simple audience does.
Yeah, I don't lose focus with what I'm there to do. I'm there to sell money. I'm there to sell my company's money the way my company wants it sold, under the terms they want to provide. And my job is to make sure that when I solve somebody's problem, I'm solving their problem with my prescription. And if I know my product and I know what the mindset is, for example, if I'm dealing with a customer buying $1 million house, his mindset is totally different than a guy that manages a tire manufacturer locally that wants to buy his house. And it's knowing through 15 years of experience, unfortunately, what people look for, and knowing in your own mind what you can do and what you can't do, and meshing them. I get deals. I'll give you a perfect example of a deal, and I hope this gentleman that I made the loan to is not listening or does not listen to this. But I went into a deal with a gentleman 10 days before closing on a $1.25 million house, who had paid a $8,000 security deposit for a lock-in to another lender, non-refundable. Never going to get it back. 5-1 arm at 7.625. But the bank that he went into told him to do this, that, and the other thing. I'm not going to get into details.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do that and the other thing. I met with the guy through his partner at work and through the builder, and he called me up and said, look, 10 days before closing, I'm already set, and I don't think you can beat this. So I said, well, if you don't mind, let's get together. We got together on a Saturday morning, he and his wife and I. He's a surgeon. I proposed a deal to him that saved him upfront money, that fit their plans, but is not necessarily a better loan. I put him into a 6-month adjustable at 7.3 instead of a 5.1 at 7.6.
Mm-hmm. But that is interesting. It begs the question why.
Yeah, it begs the question why. But here's the thing. I went in and I looked at his situation as if it were my situation. And I looked at his and his wife's beliefs and what they did with their money and how they invested. And I looked at what their needs were and what their belief system was, and I made sure that I had an understanding by confirming that with them. Then I also got on a personal level, took it into, I'm not trying to sell you something. I'm trying to show you how to solve a problem. Their problem comes into play that with the other lender they went with, there was an equity line in play, there was a new home loan in play, there was a home being sold, there was a whole bunch of stuff. I went in, I solved the problem, which saved them an additional $2,000 up front, put a loan into place that gave them what they believed to be a better option with what their needs were because of prepayments when they sold certain securities and so forth.
I see. Mm-hmm.
And they went back to the other banker and said, this is what we're thinking of doing now. And the other banker said this to them. This is where I got the deal. Besides, when I met him on a Saturday, spending the entire next day with my family and their family on the lake together helped. And being invited to their house for the 4th of July and becoming friends, and their son coming and hanging out with me all day today on my boat. I build relationships as well.
Plus, if you ever need quick surgery, you got the guy now.
And he lives in my neighborhood, and we're going wakeboarding, so if I break my back, he's an orthopedic surgeon, so I'm there.
All right.
But here's where I really made the difference. He went back to the first bank and said, I met with this guy. He has a better solution that we feel helps us better, but we've already given you $8,000. What can you do? The other banker said exactly this to him. You know what? I can't believe I missed that. That's what you should have done, absolutely, and I can do it for you on the loan you've already got locked in. So like a good customer, this surgeon called me back and said to me, you know, the other bank is going to do what you said they're going to do, and it's going to save us money, and they've agreed to do it now. And I said, that's fine, I understand completely. He says, are you angry at me? I said, no, not at all. I said, you've got to do what's best for you. I said, however, I lose a little respect for him, and you probably do too, because let's face it, you're a surgeon. And if I come in with a broken leg, and you give me a solution to fixing my broken leg, and my insurance requires that I get 2 opinions, and I go to a second doctor, and he's got a better solution, and you call me back to find out when we can schedule surgery, and I say, hey, I talked to this other doctor, and he's got this solution, and you say, you know what? I should have thought of that myself. You're right, that is better. I can do that too. Did you instill a lot of confidence in me as a patient? Are you really looking out for my best issues? Do you even understand what I need? That turned the doctor right on right on the spot. You're right, David. He wasn't looking out for my best needs. You were. You saved us money. You probed more. You found us what I need. You helped us solve our problem better, and he's coming up the back end trying to beat it with your solution. How can I respect him for that? How do I know in a year, when something else comes along that's better, that he's not going to forget about me? Close the deal.
What happened to his $8,000?
Walked away from it.
It's incredible. That's loyalty.
He walked away from. Well, I did a zero origination loan and told him I was waiving the origination. So, I mean, it made it look that's sales.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it closed. And it closed without a hitch, and in 10 days. But what happens more than that is, I go into the sales closing, which I usually don't go to closings. The number one new home salesperson in the entire Charlotte market is the real estate agent involved, who does not use me. And the builder is a builder that I'm soliciting to do lines of credit. The buyer gives me a hug and kiss in front of the selling agent. The builder gives me a hug and kiss in front of the selling agent and tells me that they're going to be contacting me later in the week to set up their lines of credit. the buyer, who I told that she asked me if I did business with their agent, and I said, no, I don't think their agent cares for me that much. She called me up to ask me why I said such a thing, and the next day at the closing gave me a big hug and kiss and told me that she's glad we got a chance to talk because now we'll be able to do business.
Great.
So you can, it's just constantly seeing the opportunity. You don't have to work hard. You have to work smart.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I think this is, I'm sure, as you went through school, and especially what you did, and I know I did at Georgetown, that you do the Harvard Business School studies. And I think there's some tangential components here to the Harvard Business School studies where if you really analyze this, and you know how they set up their stuff, if you really analyze their stuff, this really kind of meets a kind of a test case where all the things that you have talked about when we first started the interview all kind of come into play here as a philosophy, but then the philosophy turns into the doing.
Reality, right?
Right. I mean, you told the guy exactly what the deal was. You didn't lie to him. I'm sure, kept in touch with him. You said you spent all day Saturday with him.
And mathematically, I even showed him my deal was better mathematically for the first 2 years. The other deal was mathematically better after that, and I showed him everything. There was never any, oh, you didn't tell me that this other deal could be better. It was always building that complete trust. Because if he walked away at that point and didn't take my loan, he'd refer me somebody. He'd still have a good experience.
Oh, I have no doubt.
Now, the funny thing is yesterday something happened to me that's really never happened to me before. Well, it's happened maybe once or twice in my career, but not recently anyways. I was doing a loan for a lady and her husband, and they owed me $650 for 2 different appraisals and a credit report. And I put it out up front for him. I didn't collect it at application because it was a very long deal. And when we get 2 days before closing, they tell me that their friend who's a banker gave them a deal that I couldn't even come close to. So I said, well, that's great, but I put out $650 for you, owe me $650. Can you send me the check? And, everybody would, just about everybody would say, hey, didn't take your loan, I'm not giving you the $650.
Yeah, right.
I got a check yesterday for $650.
Yeah, that is unusual. The business
very,
is, right?
Very unusual. I mean, shocked the living daylights out of me. But the check came from the lady with a note saying, thanks for all your help, and if my friend didn't come through with this at the last minute, we would have closed. We're still going to pass your name on, and here's the money we owe you. That's unique.
Yeah.
That's unique. So if you,
I think you ought to rip it in half and send it back saying that's okay.
No, I actually sent her a letter back thanking her, and I spent the money, so I'm going to keep the money. But I literally, I sent her a thank you card telling her that I was pleasantly surprised, and that anything I can ever do for her down the road, she always has my ear.
Yeah, I'm sure you will get referrals. One of the things that I've noticed that's kind of trending in your conversation here is the fact that all this seems to be building up to the one common theme of everybody I interview, and that is the value of relationship selling. That is the only theme that goes through all the interviews that I do, and certainly for our business, the most important one. But you really seem to bring it up to a new level with what you're talking about and some of the cases. Because
and I'll carry it out a little bit further as well. The relationship part of it is so much more important than any other part of it, other than having something good to get, to provide somebody. Because, again, in order for me to maintain the level I've maintained, that markets are shrinking right now. Everybody, every mortgage company, every major player is down except for World Savings. There's down significantly. Wells Fargo, everybody's down in production. One of the things that I've done is by building the relationships I've built and by maintaining a very strong relationship with the company I work with, and the company I work with is one that is so highly respected in the industry and has approvals or ability to do business in just about every state in the country, I do a lot of business out of state. I'm sure that I'm of a minority of mortgage people who does this. So this month,
I have no doubt you're a minority. That's very unusual.
This month alone, I have a deal closing in Seattle, Washington, who is my CPA from Los Angeles who's moving to Seattle. I have a deal closing in New Jersey. I have a deal closing in Philadelphia. I have a deal closing in Texas and a deal closing in Florida this month, besides my normal deals. And these are all customers who, Charlotte is a very transient place. And these are all customers who either the real estate agent said, I've listed your house and I know you're relocating, but I've got a guy here locally that can make it easy for you. Or they're people that moved to another area. They just closed a $750,000 loan in San Diego last month. The gentleman calls me up. He says, David, I'm in San Diego. You closed my loan a year and a half ago. You were great. This guy in San Diego is jerking me around. I've got to close in 10 days. What can you do? And I close his loan. That's relationships. Those people, regardless of where they go, will come back to me.
I've never heard a story quite like this before. It's almost a new revenue stream.
It is. And in our company, I have unfortunately caused a little bit of a hubbub because company policy states that we actually give those business to our Charter One Direct company organization, and that they in turn close the deals and pay us a small referral fee. Mm-hmm. And I've actually reversed that on them. I said, no, I'm going to do the deals. They're my customers. They're my relationships. I'm going to put them together. I'm going to process them. I'm going to underwrite them, and you guys can close them to make sure RESPA, and Truth in Lending is all matched properly. But they're my deals. And I've created a new understanding of relationships within our organization. They're actually rewriting the policy because every month I'm closing loans outside of the city.
Right. And the proof of the matter is you're closing them.
Right.
And so that's revenue to them.
Right. Right. And it's relationship. And I believe, again, in reputation. Not only do I care about my reputation outside of the organization, more importantly, I care about my reputation within the organization. I have deals, and I had a deal where the corporate underwriter called me up and said, absolutely, positively, no way that I'm closing this loan the day before it was supposed to close, because we had an underwriter quit that approved it. And I went back, and I said, look, this is the reasons that you should do it. These are the reasons that the other underwriter did it. I don't need them. I'm not trying to commit fraud here. I don't need the money to make my house payment. I make enough money. You know that I do. But you can't screw a customer the day before closing. And we went through all the merits of the loan, and if I didn't have the certain integrity level that I had within my company, there is no question in my mind they would have said, no, that deal's not closing. But they closed the loan for me. And they closed it for me. I mean, it was very, it's not the first time where we've sat down and we said, look, and I've at times have said, no, I don't think this customer's going to repay, and we won't make the loan. That's what I mean is I don't care about, this is so...
Well, it works both ways. No, I don't find anything funny or unusual about this. I think if you're going to put yourself up as never lying and everything, it works both ways.
Absolutely. But most people that have known me in my previous life in Los Angeles know that money is the most forceful, used to be the most forceful pressure in my life. I've matured in a lot of ways in respect that the money is so much less important than reputation, integrity, and ethics and morals, that it works both ways. That you can build both at the same time and hold them both in high standards, but you can't jeopardize one for the other.
I think that's a natural progression as a human being. You look at people who are politicians or in the movie business, at some point they get concerned, the code word is they get concerned with their legacy. And I think a prime example, a sad example of it is, of course, Clark Clifford, former Secretary of Defense under Johnson and so much more, who really got into that bank deal towards the end of his life and lost his legacy. And it was the saddest thing to read the newspapers and the interviews with him, because he had really lost his legacy and his reputation. And that's what became much more valuable than money to him as he got older.
And I'll tell you what else has helped me in my career. Therefore, I've actually never used my production capabilities or my stream of income or what I believed my worth to an organization to be to hold that organization hostage. And that means a lot. I have many friends in my industry who do a lot of business who have companies that don't back them as much as my company backs me, because he'll be the first or she'll be the first to complain, the first to say it's unfair, the first to fight the deal, the first to try to figure a way around the deal. I've never gone to my bosses and said, hey, I'm the number one producer in your company. You have to do this for me. You have to do that for me. As a matter of fact, until very recently, I always worry because I work in a state that there's no, this is going to be really off the wall. I work in a state that there's,
I know what you're going to say.
There's no cause to lose your job. They can fire you in this state because you're gay. They could fire you in this state because you're ugly. They could fire you in this state because you're fat. There's no...
Uh-oh, I got a problem.
Me too.
I can't come down there now.
Me too. So I've always said I can't go against the system because I will get fired. I am not important enough in the system to cause waves. Luckily, my paranoia in that realm stayed intact until maybe 5 months ago, under which point I've learned, because I was trying to fire somebody, that it's hard to lose your job in our organization, which doesn't change my belief, but it does change my perception in some respects. But the most important thing is I've seen good producers, really good producers, or a producer that has had a really good year or two, destroy themselves within their own organizations because they couldn't get their head through doorways anymore. If there's a problem, if my processor makes a mistake, if my underwriter makes a mistake, if my closer makes a mistake, if my company makes a mistake, you will always hear David Woldman say, I screwed up, it's my fault, let me fix it, here's what I will do for you. It is never, oh, the processor screwed up, oh, the underwriter screwed up, oh, the company changed policies. It is always my fault, and I will fix it. And people respect that, even, and especially when most of them know that it's not your fault. And by not putting the company in a position of making them ever have to do anything because you're, quote-unquote, this great producer, when you get in a position where you're stuck, they want to help you.
I think that's very interesting, and this is something that I haven't quite heard articulated the way you just did. And I think I would like to kind of end the interview on that high point. I think that makes a lot of sense. This has been an unusual interview in the sense that it's you have talked and you've articulated a position at the beginning of it, held forth through some examples, and at the end articulated it again. You've really kind of stayed to the straight and narrow on your philosophy. And I think there's a lesson out there for people who are loan officers who are either new or having trouble out there and they can't quite get to the next level.
For the time.
Okay.